Hey, Jay. So you made it all right.
Yep.
You
Yep.
made a left turn when you should have went right.
No, I got straight down the road this time.
You ever
Not
knock-
always,
You ever
though.
knock on the wrong door,
Well,
thinking it's the right door? Answered your phone, somebody's name comes up.
it ain't them.
It's not,
not
it's
them.
not them.
Yeah.
Or getting the wrong line. Writer of the study today, he talks about how we sometimes get in the wrong place or right place at the wrong time, and it seems like we're making mistakes, but yet God uses us in those mistakes that we make. Sometimes you look around, you think maybe God's trying to teach me something. You know, when you're making wrong turns. Does he want you to talk to somebody, pray with somebody, encourage or help or serve somebody?
Mm-hmm.
Maybe, maybe not. But you can't just assume that your mistake is just a mistake.
Right.
It could be an opportunity. Opportunity to serve in some way or to do God's will in some way. You ever wonder if God breaks you off? You think maybe God's not using me, and then you find yourself right in a tornado of where you're being used,
Yeah.
and you see that God has prepared you all along.
Yeah. Most times, God hadn't written us off. Sometimes we stray away from Him a little bit, and then He can use us to come back to.
When I went into school and worked in the school business, I thought, boy, I've hit a hornet's nest, and I don't know what I'm doing here. And after a while, it was apparent to me that God had prepared me my whole life
For that.
for these things that I'm going to face.
Yep.
It was amazing, JR. Things that I've had happen in my life that I could use in that job.
Yeah.
And it was appreciated, but it was very much God.
Yeah.
Very much.
Yeah.
And when I first went in, I remember going down and talking to Wally one Sunday morning. And I said, I'm just overwhelmed. I'm just overwhelmed. He said, God's not. And he said, it may be that he has put you there for this very time. And, you know, I think it was.
Yeah.
I think it was a ministry there in a lot of different ways.
We seen-
God can use the messes that we make to refine us if we let him.
If we let Him, yeah.
We're looking at the story of Moses.
All right.
Talk a little bit about Moses before we get into Scripture.
Yeah. Well, Moses, this is 40 years down the road. Moses we know was born during the time when all the Hebrew babies were supposed to be killed.
Yeah,
Males
right,
were supposed to
right.
be killed. And we know the story of how his sisters hid him in the river, and then when the Pharaoh's daughter came to take her bath, she found him, and the sister insisted that he be raised by his mother till he was weaned, and they think it's probably about 4 years, and then he'd be turned back over to Pharaoh's daughter. And I'm sure there was communication there all the time, but
Right.
after that fourth birthday, after he was weaned, we don't see much about Moses, but we do know one thing. We do know that Moses knew who he was based on the scripture we're reading today. He knew he was a Hebrew. He knew he wasn't an Egyptian.
Right.
I'm sure he remembered his mother and father, and probably his sister, and maybe even Aaron, his brother.
Yeah.
So he had that relationship with them for long enough, and they say if you learn most of your things, the first 4 years or something like that. I'm sure that Moses' mother was constantly telling him about the Hebrew people, about his people, not
Yeah.
the Egyptians, about his people and what they had been through to get to this point in their life. And we now see years later when Moses has grown up, and that's where these verses in chapter 2, verses 11 through 15 starts. It says, years later, after Moses had grown up, he went out to his own people. There's a good sign right there that Moses knows who he is. And now we also know that during this time of when Moses was growing up, he was educated at probably as high as anybody was. He had a great education, the Egyptian education that the Hebrews wouldn't have had. He was well educated during that time. He went out to his own people and observed their forced labor. He saw an Egyptian striking a Hebrew, one of his people. Looking all around and seeing no one, he struck the Egyptian dead and hid him in the sand. The next day he went out and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. He asked the one in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your neighbor? Who made you a commander over us, and judge over us?" The man replied. "Are you planning to kill me as you killed the Egyptian?" Then Moses became afraid and thought, "What I did is certainly known." When Pharaoh heard about this, he tried to kill Moses, but Moses fled from Pharaoh and went to live in the land of Midian and sat down by a well. Here Moses is 40 years old. I don't guess he was married at that time, Phil. He later got married when he went to Midian, we know, and married some descendants of Abraham when he was there. But he went out to see what was going on with the forced labor that his people were going through in Egypt. And he saw this Egyptian overlord, Egyptian, whatever you want to call him, slave master,
Yeah.
striking a Hebrew. And we do know from what we read about Moses that he also had a strong sense of justice. He knew right from wrong. And he did not, besides knowing that the Egyptian was striking one of his own people, he knew it wasn't right. And he took matters into his own hand. Looking around first, so it's if that was happened today in a court, it'd be premeditated, wouldn't it? He looked around to see what was going on, see if anybody was watching him. When he didn't think anybody was watching, he killed the Egyptian and says hid him in the sand. The next day, then, thinking he had probably gotten off scot-free, he went out to look at and saw 2 Hebrews fighting. Went out among his people again and saw 2 of the Hebrews fighting. And said to the one that I guess he thought was in the wrong, "Why are you attacking your neighbor?" Of course, once again there, Phil, his mother would have taught him who a neighbor is.
Yeah.
At that time. The Hebrew way of knowing of who a neighbor was and how neighbors were supposed to help each other. And he said, "Why are you attacking your brother?" The man came back with a reply that Moses didn't want to hear, wasn't it? He said, "Who made you commander? Are you planning to kill me like you did the Egyptian yesterday?" Oh, Moses thought, "Whoa, I'm in bad trouble now, because even though I'm raised as an Egyptian, I'm not an Egyptian, I'm a Hebrew, and this is not going to go well for me." And he said, what I did is certainly known. And sure enough, when Pharaoh heard about it, even though Moses had really been raised in the palace, raised as an Egyptian, probably almost raised as his grandson, because it's the Pharaoh's daughter, he went about trying to kill Moses because of what Moses had done. But Moses fled and went to live in the land of Midian, and there he sat down by a well. Now, the land of Midian is across the there's the Red Sea, that when it parted, almost over into the Promised Land.
Yeah.
And probably, if you look at a map, it's probably about 150 miles, but it was more like 200 miles because you had to travel up and come back down to get to it. It wasn't a good land. It was sparsely populated, they said, and it was inhabited by the Midians, and the Midians were members of, they were Abraham's descendants through Abraham's second wife, who he married after Sarah died. Sarah had her children, not Sarah. Abraham had Isaac through Sarah, and then she passed away a few years later, and Abraham married again, and this is children from his second wife, who lived in that area. As Moses grew into manhood from being a child, he still knew that he was not an Egyptian. He was a Hebrew. He also knew that the writer says he thinks he needed to be part of the solution for the oppression of God's people. I think Moses probably knew that what Abraham had been promised by God about this promised land, and he knew he was a descendant of Abraham. So I'm not sure at that time that I know how much Moses thought about his role in getting the Egyptians or the Hebrews out of Egypt at that point in time. The writer says that he needed to be part of the solution, and maybe that was the reason why he stepped up and killed the Egyptian. I think he probably killed the Egyptian because the Egyptian was hurting a defenseless person, and maybe it's because it was a Hebrew too. But anyway, he messed up. But feel in all the times I've studied about Moses and read about Moses, I don't know that I ever thought that this case of him killing the Egyptian wasn't something that God had planned. Because we see what comes of that after this. We now see he's out of the country and has been kicked out or ran for his life. And let's see what the rest of the scripture say, and then we'll talk briefly about, was that really something Moses controlled? Or obviously Moses controlled it. Moses had to be the one that did do the killing.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure that God would think that was a mistake. Maybe it was God's plan that's the way Moses got out of Egypt.
You know, people sometimes today, they take matters into their own hands.
Yeah.
Just like Moses did.
He did do that.
And they get in trouble doing that.
He did do that. Yeah.
In fact, we do that. We take matters in our own hands.
It's normally not to that
sometimes.
extent,
No.
killing someone, but we do like to speed things up, I guess. And maybe that's what Moses was trying to do. He was trying to speed the process up of getting his people, the Hebrews, out from under the bondage in Egypt. But now he's in Midian, and we'll see what happens at that point.
Well, he sat down by a well.
Yeah.
So he must have been thirsty,
Yeah.
wasn't
Well, you don't find many wells in that area.
he? No. Let's look in verses 16 through 22, chapter 2. Now the priest of Midian had 7 daughters. They came to draw water and filled the troughs to water their father's flock. Then some shepherds arrived and drove them away. But Moses came to the rescue and watered their flock. When they returned to their father, Reuel, he asked, "Why have you come back so quickly today?" They answered, "An Egyptian rescued us from the shepherds. He even drew water for us and watered the flock." "So where is he?" he asked his daughters. "Why then did you leave the man behind? Invite him to dinner." Moses agreed to stay with the man, and he gave his daughter Zipporah to Moses in marriage. She gave birth to a son he named Gershom, for he said, "I've been a resident alien in a foreign land." So the Israelites were also in harsh circumstances,
Yeah.
but God hadn't forgotten them.
Yeah.
Moses was on the run, really. And now he comes in, and he didn't learn from taking matters into his own hands. He comes in there and sits at this well, and here these shepherds are giving these girls with all these sheep a hard time, won't let them water their flock. And it doesn't really say how he took matters into his own hands, but they got their sheep watered, didn't they?
I don't know how many there were, but he won the battle there. What kind of battle it was, we don't know.
3 different times in Exodus, Reuel, who is also referred to as Jethro, is called the priest of Midian.
Right.
We don't know if he was a priest of the Jewish faith
Right.
or not, but it keeps referencing him as the priest of Midian. That's a problem if he's worshiping the wrong deity, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
In any event, when Moses came in and
But there's a possibility he was since he was a descendant of Abraham that he was worshiping the true God.
he
in
was a
some form.
descendant of Abraham.
Yeah.
In
Yes, he
some
was.
form, it's believed by many scholars that he was
Yeah.
of Hebrew Jewish faith.
Right, right. Maybe they're not to the
An
extent that,
Israelite in practice.
right, right.
Even sometimes later, he said, when Moses had led the people out of Egypt, he said there one time, "Now I know that the Lord is greater than all gods."
Yeah, yeah.
So it's an indication that he was worshiping the Lord our
Yeah,
God.
I think so.
He the Bible tells us he also brought a burnt offering and sacrifice to God. He was I don't know if you'd call him a ruler over others, but he was highly respected.
Yeah, he was probably that.
This person who was sought out for advice, and maybe a tribal leader of the Midianites
That's
or
what I was
something like
gonna
that.
say, yeah.
But anyway, Moses comes to the rescue,
Mm-hmm.
just like he did that Hebrew in the pit. And that could have turned out bad for Moses, but it didn't. As it turned out, he did them a favor. He did Jethro a favor, unknowingly, or not really thinking about that. But by sitting there and taking up for them girls with the sheep and goats, he got an invite to dinner, didn't
Yeah.
he? Reuel means friend of God. So there's
Yeah.
some further proof
Right.
that he was thought highly of. The assumption that Moses was Egyptian probably came from his hair.
Probably didn't
From-
have any,
from
I
his
think,
clo-
probably.
It's possible he'd shaved his body,
Right.
which was custom that the Egyptians. Although I would think out there in the desert, he probably wasn't shaving a lot, nothing. But it could have been that he still looked like an Egyptian in his dress and everything.
I'm sure he dressed like an Egyptian, which would be different than the nomads at the,
But whatever it was about him, the girls recognized him as an Egyptian,
Right.
didn't they? Even though they were closer to him being a relative of him than the Egyptians ever
Absolutely,
were.
sure.
So, because they were blood kin.
right,
Hospitality was usually shown to strangers in that time, and it was a big thing. There weren't any inns.
right.
Places where people could pay to spend the night were few and far between. So it was important, and people relied on other people in order to travel. People had to show hospitality.
And that was particularly true among the Hebrews, Israelites, they were,
Right.
either way you could call them, but that's what was, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
their law even talked about those things. But
Yeah, and even it was tradition, typical
Yeah.
to provide a meal.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know, they
yes.
they weren't able to travel with their own food a lot of times, so they relied on people not only for a place to stay, but a good warm meal and a roof over their head. So it was out of duty probably that Jethro felt. Well, what did you leave him out there for?
Yeah, go get
What are
him.
you girls thinking about? Bring him in here. Let's have supper. And he's offering that hospitality.
But I'm not sure that the girls would have thought that would have been right without their dad telling them to.
That's possible.
They might have thought, wow, we can't,
Yeah,
not something we should
can't
do.
bring a man
yeah,
home
yeah,
that you haven't, hadn't
Yeah,
sought
yeah,
you out and asked
yeah.
you
yeah.
about anything. But turned out pretty. I guess Jethro approved of it.
Oh, yes, it is,
Or
obviously.
Reuel, whatever you want to call him. And he gave his daughter in marriage.
Yeah.
It doesn't say that he gave her that night, but sometime pretty close.
Yeah, yeah.
It looks like he gave him Zipporah in marriage.
Moses made a good first impression, not only on the girls, but also on Jethro, didn't he?
Yeah,
He sure did.
yeah. It seemed like in the Old Testament, when we look at the Old Testament characters, it doesn't matter what kind of mess they were in. Last week we talked about Joseph.
Right.
What a mess he got in.
Yeah.
And what things had been done from him, to him.
Right.
He had a reason, if anybody did,
be sour.
complain and pack it in, didn't he?
Yes, he did.
But his faith kept him in it. And I think Moses' faith,
Yeah.
seeing, here I was cast out into a river.
Yeah.
And, with his Hebrew heritage and then being murdering somebody.
Right.
And, having that on his conscience. And then running through the desert that he shouldn't have ever been able to get through. And then he comes to Midian and sits down there by that well and thinks, "Phew, water." And then he finds himself in another altercation.
Yeah.
But that's how God uses people. It doesn't matter. Sometimes he puts you in tough circumstances, and that helps prepare us for the future.
Yeah.
It says he had a son named Gershom.
Yeah.
And it talked about, I'm a sojourner in a foreign land.
Right.
You think that's the way he felt?
Yeah. I
Where
think
did he feel like his home was?
Well, he hadn't known any home other than Egypt, to be honest.
That's all he had known.
That's all he'd known.
But I
But
think
still, he knew that wasn't his home.
it's like us, JR. Home's with our family. isn't it?
There you go. There you go. Wherever that is.
Wherever my family is, that's my
Yep.
home.
Yep.
And although he felt like a resident alien, he'll find out that's where his family was.
Yep.
And they became comfortable there
Yeah.
with his wife and child. And it's only later that God calls him to lead the people out of Egypt.
Yeah, we're moving on now to chapter 3, verses 5 through 15. Now, 5 through 10. During this time, which has probably been about 40 more years, because we know that he left to go back to Egypt to bring the people out when he was 80.
Yeah.
And he came into Midian when he was 40. So this is the second 40-year period of time, which we know the Bible's often divided into 40-year periods of time.
We laugh about it, but there's something to it.
Yeah, there is. Obviously there is. Yes, there is.
The numbers 40, 12, 7, and
Yeah.
3.
Yeah, they're big.
And
Big deal.
Those,
Yeah. Well, the Hebrews, during that time, those 40 years, the Hebrews continued to suffer under Egyptian rule. And we know it even got worse because we know that the reason that they were initially enslaved them was because the Hebrews became so plentiful. There were more Hebrews than there were Egyptians. And the Egyptians were afraid that they might rise up and conquer them and try to kill them, and attack them. So they started putting to work. And they actually built 2 big cities during that time frame. It said they didn't know if it was army garrisons or if it was supply facilities that would hold grain and stuff during the winter time whenever the crops weren't producing. But anyway, they were continued to be suffer under the Egyptian rule, and it actually got worse and worse and worse. I think they finally made them not only make the bricks, but made them carry the straw to make the bricks and things like that. They just got worse and worse. Now we see here in verses 5 of chapter 3 that God talks to Moses. Moses is out with his father-in-law's Jethro's flocks, tending the sheep, close to or on the bottom of Mount Moriah.
Mount Moriah.
Moriah, that'd be a better way to put it. Mountain of God is what God
Yes.
calls it, and Moses calls it later. So Moses is going along with his flocks, and here's the verses. Do not come closer, he said. This is God now speaking to Moses. And one thing we can think about, Phil, Moses wrote these verses. Moses lived this out. Now, most of the time that the writers in the Bible, a lot of it's secondhand.
Right.
This is
Or
Moses'
passed
autobiography.
down through the ages.
Yes, this is
This
Moses'
is first-hand
account of him, of what he went through. He said, do not come closer, he said. Remove the sandals from your feet, for the place you are standing is holy ground. Then he continued, I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses hid his face because he was afraid to look at God. Then the Lord said, I have observed the misery of my people in Egypt, and have heard them crying out because of their oppressors. I know about their sufferings, and I've come down to rescue them from the power of the Egyptians, and to bring them from that land to a good and spacious land, a land flowing with milk and honey, the territory of the Canaanites, Hittites, Amorites, Perizzites, Hivitites, and Jebusites, all those bites. So because the Israelites' cry for help have come to me, and I have also seen the way the Egyptians are oppressing them, therefore go, I am sending you to Pharaoh, so that you may lead my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Moses now gets to call that he probably was trying to force upon the people or the Pharaoh, maybe even back 40 years before when he attacked this. That was his first foray that we know of trying to alleviate some of the pain that was happening to the Hebrew people 40 years before. Now God takes him, sends him to the land of Midian, gets him a family, puts him out there tending sheep, this man who's been raised as a Pharaoh's son, and sends him out there for 40 years. But now he says it's time to do what you started 40 years before. He says that you're standing on holy ground. We know that that's the mountain when they came out of Egypt. Then some few years later, that they camped at the foot of Mount Moriah, and that's when Moses went up, I guess, and got the 10 Commandments. Was from that mountain. So it was known as the holy site, holy ground. Moses knew as a Hebrew that if he looked at God, he would die. So he hid his face from God when God was talking to him. He said, and God then identifies exactly who he is. So in terms of Moses will know, he says, I am the God of your father, God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, and the God of Jacob. Moses knew all those Hebrew fellow fathers.
Even back in the beginning when he was there, and he and Zipporah were talking, and he said, God's on that mountain.
Yeah.
He knew God was up there.
Yeah.
We don't know really how. We know the earth shook,
Yeah.
and there was lightning around
Yeah.
the mountain
Yeah.
that led him to believe. There was something about it that
Right.
looked different than a regular old thunderstorm.
Yeah.
And he knew that was the mountain of God.
Yeah. No question about it.
Yeah.
The title he gave himself, the God of Abraham and your father Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, linked Moses directly to God, to the God's immediate, linked God to Moses' immediate family, but it also linked Moses to the covenant relationship that God had ever entered into with Abraham. When he told Abraham, I'm going to make a great nation out of you. You're going to be in a land that's yours. But he also told Abraham later on, it's not going to be yours right now. It's going to be 400 years later after you come out of slavery. After the Hebrews come out of slavery, that's when it's going to be your people's land. So then he said, as we said, we talked about the fact that Moses was afraid to look at God because he thought he might die. And then the Lord said, I'm sending you to Pharaoh that you may lead my people, the Israelites, out of Egypt. Wonder how long it took for that to sink in before Moses said, whoa, what have I got myself into?
Here's Moses. He's Egyptian royalty.
Yeah,
So he kills a man.
yeah,
He has to flee.
yeah,
Or he fears being killed himself
yes,
for killing this Egyptian. The second thing, he winds up at a well. He takes up for some girls. He finds himself as a sheep and goat herder,
yes.
and he's married into the family.
And it probably
Now
thinks
That's not looked upon at that time as a desirable profession.
the shepherds were some of the lowliest people on earth, even when Christ came.
And that's why we
100
see
years
them
later.
used there
Yeah.
in Christ.
Yeah,
God can use anybody, and no matter what mistake we've made, God can redeem those mistakes, can he?
was it truly a mistake?
I think he was following the path. It's
I
It's
don't know, I'm just asking
perceived-
the question because I don't know.
I think it's perceived as a mistake when we take things into
Into
our own hands
I could, when you said that a while ago, that, yeah,
and try to make things right when there are things that sometimes God has to make right.
yeah, yeah.
Or maybe the law needs to get involved or
Yeah,
something,
yeah,
you know.
yeah. Well, of course, there wasn't any law back,
Not-
when
not
we're
for-
talking about slaves, for a slave
Yeah,
didn't have,
no.
he didn't have a chance, he
He
was gonna
didn't-
get beat every
He
day.
didn't have any advocates,
No,
did he?
he didn't have any advocates
But
stand up
yet,
for him.
even though they didn't have any advocates, it wasn't right for a
Right.
Hebrew
No, that's true.
or an Egyptian to kill another Egyptian
Right.
over a conduct of a slave.
Yeah, that's true.
Or his
That's
conduct with that
That's
person that he owned.
How many times do you think Moses, during that 40-year period of time, ever thought, man, am I gonna do something here? Is God gonna use me again, or am I stuck out here just following these old dirty sheep rest of my
Well,
life?
You know, that had to come to mind.
It had to come to mind, didn't it? Now, I've got a sheep over here that's bloated, and I'm going to walk it around today to keep it from dying on me. But we see that God can redeem our mistakes. If that was a mistake, I mean, we know Moses shouldn't have done it, but God can use that situation, and look what he did.
Sometimes our sin puts us in a wilderness.
Yeah, there you
It puts us in a place that we're not familiar with.
Yeah.
We don't realize what we've done, or maybe we realize too late
Yeah.
what we've done.
I think Moses realized the next day when those two Hebrews that were fighting said,
Yeah.
"We know what you did." That's when
Came back-
Moses
Came
realized
back real quick,
that
didn't
that he was in trouble.
it?
Yeah,
It doesn't really talk about what he did other than flee. But you know, when he's walking out through that desert,
yeah,
he said, God, I shouldn't have took that into my own hands. I'm trying to preserve my life here, and that's what we can do too.
Yeah,
When we find
yeah.
ourselves in sin, confess it, give it to God, and receive his forgiveness, because he can redeem our mistakes.
yeah, yeah.
He can use us again. If we recall our mistakes from the past, look back on the mistakes that we made, and, I don't have to look far, and
Yeah.
there's a list of them.
Mhm.
And I think if most people are honest, they'll agree that's their background too.
Mhm.
And sometimes look at those mistakes and find that God is using those as a trial by fire.
Yeah.
What's fire do? It refines gold.
Right.
It refines us when we go through things like that. And God brings us through it many times. He redeems our mistakes and uses us again. Journal your thoughts next time you make a mistake. What are you thinking? We like to know what Moses was thinking out there in the desert, or when he was out there chasing some stinking goat.
Yeah. Yeah.
And did Moses feel qualified to lead the people out of Egypt?
No.
No, he felt disqualified, didn't
Yeah.
he?
Yeah.
And just like we do when we have sin in our life that's unconfessed,
Mhm.
we don't feel useful, do we? We don't feel like God can
God
use
can't
us.
use us. Look what we've done.
Confess it, it's the main thing. Confess it and ask the Holy Spirit to guide you. Seek to be obedient to his call, whatever it may be. It might not be leading the people out of Egypt, but it might be leading somebody to Christ.
Yeah.
Or sharing your mistakes with someone else so they don't repeat your
Yep.
mistakes.
Yep.
Those are things that God does every day.
Yep.
Does every day.
Yep.
Good
Good lesson again.
lesson for all of us. We can always be of use. Next week, talk about well-meaning people interrupt our plans. That
I
happened.
had this all laid out, Phil. Now you come in here with a big old idea of yours,
Well,
and I don't like it. We'll see what happens.
we all get interrupted. don't
We do, we do.
we? So,
Yep.
hope you can join us next week when we discuss that. We've enjoyed bringing this study to you. Hope you've enjoyed it too. Thank you for watching.